In today's video, we're going to analyze Ripple and what is most likely to happen during the rest of 2025. As you know, we're entering an alt season, and this very alt season will probably bring some very important months for most cryptocurrencies. The question we're going to ask ourselves is, once Ripple surpasses its previous all-time high again, how far could it go up? What's going to happen? As I said, here we're going to do a general long-term technical analysis. This won't be a fundamental analysis, although obviously, in this case, fundamental analysis also works in Ripple's favor, since it has now definitively won the lawsuit against the SEC. And this will most likely push the price upward as well. So without further delay, let's get started and basically analyze Ripple against the dollar. We're looking at the weekly chart of Ripple against the dollar, and what we can see here is that we've been moving sideways since around 2017, 2018. We've stayed within a very, very important range in Ripple. A range that, by the way, we've already broken out of since around March or April 2025. And from this point on, we're in uncharted territory of all-time highs. This is important because, as you already know, when we're at all-time highs, people don't know how to identify resistance levels. And this is very important. The best thing to do is to draw a Fibonacci retracement, especially from the previous bear market, in this case from 2021 to 2022. And what we can see here, as you can see, are basically the Fibonacci extensions. And right now, we've broken through the 1.23 Fibonacci extension. The next Fibonacci extension would be the $4.08 zone, then the $5.12 zone, and after that, the area between $6.40 and $6.90. Be careful, these are already very important levels. And then the next one is $8.80. And finally, I don't think it will go much further than that, the $10 mark. So the million-dollar question is, what will happen with Ripple? How far up to which of these levels could we see Ripple rise? Well, the important thing to keep in mind is that we are already above the all-time high from the previous cycle. And this is very positive because alt season has just begun. At this point, we know that the $4 zone is very likely to be reached. The $5.12 zone as well. It's almost certain that we'll reach it. And now here we come to very critical zones, which will be very difficult for Ripple's price to surpass. The $6.95, $6.41 zone. All of this area here is the Fibonacci golden pocket, basically the Fibonacci extension, and this area is a major resistance that Ripple will have a hard time breaking through. So we'll need to keep a close eye on all these zones here. For now, and from the current price, we're expecting that a rise of between 95 and 120%, which could easily happen. But obviously, for Ripple to go up 120%, it would also mean that Ripple, in this case, has to rise more than Bitcoin will, because Bitcoin is at 120,000. We don't expect Bitcoin to go up 120%, so Ripple against Bitcoin also has to be bullish for it to reach these levels. In any case, I do expect to see Ripple at $6.4, $6.9 during this cycle. In fact, depending on how the Ripple versus Bitcoin chart looks, it could even go a bit further, reaching the 8.8 area or even up to 10. Beyond 10, I really doubt it. We'd be talking about, from now, between 120% and up to around 200% profit. Keep in mind that Ripple is one of those coins that can explode really fast and give you that 200% profit in just 2 or 3 weeks. And we think there's more than just 2 or 3 weeks left in the bull run. There are still a few months to go. It's not that big of a deal. So, for Bitcoin, or in this case, Ripple, to double or triple from the current price, it's really not that big of a deal. So, like I said, somewhere between the $6.50 and $10 range, that's probably where we'll hit a market top, and from there things get more complicated. But like I said, all of this depends on how the Ripple to Bitcoin chart looks, so let's quickly take a look at the chart we're talking about. This is the Ripple to Bitcoin chart on the weekly time frame, and it's really key, really important to keep in mind. Why is that? Because we've been forming a consolidation triangle. Pay attention to this. Since 2014, and especially since 2017, that's when the resistance started. And notice how important this is. At the top in 2017, we hit a ceiling against Bitcoin. In the 2018 area, we also hit a ceiling against Bitcoin. In this area here, again, we hit a ceiling. Basically, in 2022, we also hit a ceiling here. In 2023, we hit a ceiling here as well, and look at what happened in November 2024. Finally, we have decisively broken through the significant resistance after, get this, a truly whopping 2,765 long and arduous days moving sideways, and even downward against Bitcoin's price action. After, and I want to emphatically repeat this, more than 2,765 long and arduous days moving sideways. That's precisely 395 weeks of sideways or bearish market movement against Bitcoin. We have definitively broken through this crucial key level. We have successfully broken the significant downtrend, and finally, we have triumphantly broken out of the confining triangle formation to the upside. And this is extremely important because even though Ripple has performed poorly against Bitcoin in previous cycles, and that's easy to compare, Bitcoin 2 cycles ago was at 20,000, and now it's at 120,000. Ripple 2 cycles ago was at $3.5, and now it's at $3.5. This could change this cycle because this time we have broken out of this triangle to the upside. We're missing one last bullish signal for the Ripple to Bitcoin chart, which would be to break through this resistance here. I'll zoom in a bit so you can see it better. All this area here, notice how we hit a top in August 2021, hit a top in October 2022, hit a top in July 2023, hit a top in January 2025, and we're hitting a top right now in August 2025. We need to break through the area of more or less around 2,975 or especially the 3,000 Satoshi zone. It's important to break through this whole 3,000 Satoshi area and close weekly candles above it. If we manage to close weekly candles above that, I would expect an explosive move upward in the price of Ripple against Bitcoin. This basically means that, in this case, Ripple will appreciate much faster than Bitcoin. And for example, if we're expecting moves in Ripple against Bitcoin that could go up by around 150%, that means if Bitcoin goes up 100%, Ripple, in this case, would go up basically 1.5 times more, up to 250%. So, what we're expecting here are upward moves from 3,000 Satoshis up to the area of 6,500 Satoshis, 6,700 Satoshis. This, of course, is only if we manage to break through the 3,000 zone, which we haven't done yet, but it does give a good signal after having broken that downward trend line. Therefore, the clearest sign that Ripple is going to be a really good option this year, which it hasn't been in previous years, but this year it could be, obviously, is if we break through the 3,000 Satoshis. From that point on, we'll basically go back to the chart against the dollar and we'll see that it doesn't look so bad. If Bitcoin still has to go up by 50%, for example, it doesn't look so bad for Ripple in this case. Not just going up 50%, but actually doubling or tripling. In this case, we're talking about around 120, 170%, or even, as I said, a bit more and reaching the $10 zone. All of this, basically, is simply based on technical analysis. And remember that besides this, we have the whole SEC and Ripple situation, where basically Ripple has already won 100% against the SEC, so it's not going to have any kind of problem anymore, and it's going to be considered one of the best assets by the United States. Because basically the only ones who have beaten the SEC right now are Bitcoin and Ripple. So, it's very important to keep in mind that Ripple could easily still go up 209% from its current level. So, well, these are key levels to watch. I think it's pretty clear the potential this coin could have, even though, I repeat, in previous cycles it was a disappointment, because it clearly was. There are people who have been stuck in Ripple for many, many years. I know people who, back in 2016 when I entered the market, bought Ripple, and in 2017 they had some profits, and they're still sitting on exactly the same profits as in 2017. At that time, if you had bought Bitcoin instead of Ripple, you'd have a ton of gains, but you bought Ripple. Maybe this is the cycle where Ripple gets its act together a bit and finally starts to catch up a little, in this case, starts to catch up a bit to what Bitcoin is, right? And finally, something else important to keep in mind is, what would happen to Ripple if it reached the market capitalization of other cryptocurrencies? And for that, we also have this page, which is important. Let's put XRP here to see what could happen with, in this case, XRP, if it had Bitcoin's market capitalization, which I'm telling you, it's not going to reach. Okay. It's not going to get enough money to absorb all the money that Bitcoin has. But anyway, in that case, it would reach $40. But let's not compare it to Bitcoin, let's compare it to Ether, for example, okay? If in this case XRP were to get all the market capitalization that Ether has, which right now would be 2.65 times what it currently has, which isn't that much, Ripple would easily reach the $8.64 range. So here you can already see a bit of the potential it has. I'm not saying that Ripple is going to surpass Ether. While Ripple is reaching the value, the money that's currently in Ether, Ether is also going to gain more value and get closer to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is also going to gain more value. All coins in general are going to get more money because more money is going to come into the crypto market. Okay. It's important to understand this, but it's true that Ripple could get about 2.5 times more money than it has right now, getting closer to what Ether is right now, Ether getting closer to what Bitcoin is right now, and Bitcoin getting closer to what gold is right now. Do you get what I mean? They're all going to move a little bit closer forward. But as I said, the area around 8.64, 8.8, which we've seen is a really important resistance to keep in mind, 8.85, right? This whole area here between 8.8 and $10, as you can see, there are a lot of things pointing to the same area, the same level, and it's really worth keeping this in mind. So, well, with this, that pretty much wraps up the analysis of Ether for this cycle. So let's move on to a quick recap. As you already know, as you've already seen, Ripple has been a disappointment for many years, but this is the first time it actually looks good technically. It's the first time we're getting close to and breaking all-time highs, and after so many years of moving sideways, more than 8 years sideways, we're definitely about to see an explosive move. Plus, the fundamentals are also lining up. So overall, Ripple could be one of the best opportunities of the year, or at least that's how it looks. So, let me know in the comments if you want me to analyze any other cryptocurrency for the cycle and the 2025 season analysis. And without further ado, I'll end the video here. Remember that you can subscribe, give it a like, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new video. See you soon, folks.